Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Positivity series on Just for Your Ears podcast. Life doesn't always move the way we plan. Sometimes we face failures, disappointments, delays, and moments that silently break our confidence. During such times, we often ask ourselves, why is this happening to me? But what if some difficult phases are not meant to weaken us, but to strengthen us? There is a simple saying: the longer the tea bag sits in hot water, the stronger the tea becomes. Today's story is about a young boy, an old tea stall, and a rusted kettle, and a life lesson hidden inside a simple glass of tea. So sit back, relax, and let us walk into a rainy evening in the streets of Madurai. In one of the older neighborhoods of Madurai, where evenings carried the smell of jasmine flowers, wet mud, and hot bhajis from roadside shops, there stood a tiny tea stall near a busy share auto stand. The signboard above it had faded long ago, but people still called it Murugan Tea Stall. Office goers stopped there before heading home. College students gathered around laughing loudly, and auto drivers discussed politics over steaming glasses of tea. Amidst all this noise and movement stood Murugan Anna, a thin, grey haired man with kind eyes and a permanently calm smile. People often said there was something special about his tea. Nobody knew whether it was the extra ginger, the slow brewing, or simply the warmth with which he served it. But his tea had a strange ability to comfort tired minds. One rainy Wednesday evening, a young boy named Arvind walked slowly toward the stall. Murugananna noticed immediately that something was wrong. Usually, Aravind arrived with a group of boys from his coaching center, speaking loudly and joking about cricket or cinema or something or the other. But that evening he was alone, his shoulders drooping as though he was carrying an invisible weight. His eyes looked tired, and there was a silence around him that did not belong to someone of his age. Murugananna did not ask too many questions at first. He simply prepared a glass of tea for the boy. As he knew, Arvind always took tea bag tea. As the water boiled, he dipped the tea bag slowly into the hot water and left it there longer than usual. The fragrance of tea spread gently into the rainy evening air. Arvind watched absent mindedly, lost in his thoughts. That morning, the results of an important entrance examination had been announced. For nearly a year, he had prepared for it with enormous pressure resting on his shoulders. His widowed mother stitched blouses late into the night to pay his coaching fees, and every relative around him had repeatedly reminded him that he was the hope of the family. When the results came, he had failed not by a huge margin, but by just a few marks. Yet, those few marks felt heavy enough to crush his confidence completely. Since morning, he had avoided phone calls, ignored messages from friends, and refused to even look at his mother properly because he could not bear the thought that he had disappointed her. Murugananna quietly handed him the glass of tea and asked him what would happen if the tea bag was removed from hot water immediately. Arvind replied softly that the tea would remain weak. Murugananna nodded and asked what would happen if the tea bag stayed longer in the hot water. It becomes stronger, the boy answered automatically. Murugananna smiled gently and told him that life often works the same way. Sometimes people think difficulties are destroying them, when in reality, those very struggles are bringing out their hidden strength. As the rain continued to fall outside, Murugananna pointed toward an old rusted kettle sitting beside the stove. Its surface had darkened from years of fire, and its handle looked worn out from constant use. Murugananna said that the kettle was older than the boy himself. Years ago, when he was first starting the tea stall, the kettle had been the only thing he could afford. He had bought it second hand from a scrap shop with whatever little money he had managed to save. In those days, the tea stall was nothing more than a tiny roadside setup with a leaking thin sheet roof. When it rained, the customers had to stand holding umbrellas while drinking tea. Business was poor in the beginning, but Murugan and his wife somehow managed together. She prepared bondas and budgies every evening while he made tea, and slowly people started visiting regularly. Then life suddenly changed. His wife fell seriously ill, and whatever little savings they had disappeared into hospital bills and medicines. Murugan Anna recalled one particular night when he had returned from the hospital after borrowing money from three different people. He had sat alone inside the tea stall after closing time, exhausted and angry with life. The entire street was silent except for the sound of rainwater dripping from the roof. As he sat there helplessly, his eyes fell upon the old kettle resting over the dying flame. For years, the kettle had endured intense heat every single day. Morning to night, flames burnt beneath it, blackening its surface and wearing it down slowly. Yet, despite all the heat, the kettle continued to provide warmth and comfort to thousands of tired people who stopped by the stall. Murugananna said that at that moment he realized something important. Without fire, the kettle would remain just another useless vessel, lying forgotten somewhere. The very thing that burnt it was also the thing that gave it purpose. Arvind listened silently. The tea in his hands had become warm and comforting, and for the first time that day, his mind began to calm down slightly. Murugananna explained softly that pain, disappointment, and failure were uncomfortable, but they were not always punishments. Sometimes they were life's way of shaping a person into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Weak tea never spreads fragrance, he said. Only tea that spends time in hot water develops real strength and flavor. The rain outside grew steadier, and people hurried past carrying umbrellas, while buses splashed water across the roads. Life continued moving exactly as before, but inside that small tea stall, something had changed within the boy. His exam result had not changed, nor had his problems disappeared. Yet, the crushing feeling inside his chest had softened a little. He no longer felt completely broken. As he got up to leave, Murugananna smiled and told him not to allow one failed examination to define his entire life. Sometimes, he said, life keeps certain people in hot water longer because it knows they are capable of becoming stronger than they ever imagined. Years later, whenever Arvind faced difficult moments in life, he would remember that rainy evening in the tiny tea stall, the smell of ginger tea, the sound of rain on the tin roof, the old rusted kettle sitting quietly near the stove, and the man who taught him that heat does not always destroy a person. Sometimes it prepares them. Sometimes life keeps us in hot water longer than we want. The struggles, failures, heartbreaks, and waiting periods may feel painful in the moment, but many times they are shaping our strength, patience, wisdom, and character. Just like tea develops its richness in hot water, human beings often discover their true resilience during difficult seasons of life. Do not judge your life during hard times. Some of the strongest souls are brewed slowly. Thanks, my dear friends, for spending these few minutes with me today. If this story touched your heart, do share it with someone who may be silently going through a difficult phase right now. Sometimes a small story can become a big source of hope for someone. And always remember, heat does not always destroy, sometimes it prepares. This is your friend from Just for Your Ears podcast signing off. Until we meet again in yet another episode of Positivity, take care, stay hopeful, keep smiling, and keep spreading the kindness. Bye.